Please welcome Chair of the National Archives Foundation, Governor Jim Blanchard.
Good evening. We have a great show tonight for you, and we're glad you're all here, especially Mrs. Laura Bush. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. I'm speaking on behalf of our foundation, our National Archives Foundation, and our Executive Director, Patrick Madden, who you'll hear from, and also our Board of Directors. In fact, I would like our Board of Directors to please stand. All right. This is our 2018 Records of Achievement Award ceremony. We are a nonprofit partner with the National Archives, and we offer support, financial, creative support, energy to help the archives tell the American story and to really enhance the archives' mission of making billions of important federal documents, photographs, film, and artifacts accessible to the public. In short, we work to tell the American story. Our foundation works to inspire Americans to learn about our past and play an active role in our future. And we're committed to capturing the American story in its entirety through a number of exhibitions, events, public programs, and educational initiatives. I would also like to recognize some of our friends who are here, who've been, everyone here is a distinguished guest, and we thank you for being here. But I do want to acknowledge Congressman Mark Meadows and Debbie Meadows. They've been good friends of the archives. Please stand. And I cannot see with these lights as to whether District Judge for District of Columbia, Beryl Howell is here or not. If Judge Howell is here, she recently swore in new citizens. Please stand, Judge Howell. Thank you. Beryl Howell. And also Senior U.S. District Judge Royce Lambeth of the District of Columbia. Thank you for being with us. Now, a special friend of one of our board members is Mayor Mary Marvin, the mayor of Bronxville, New York. Welcome. And one of my pals I want to introduce, because he's not only a friend of the archives and a lover of history, but now what luck, he happens to be General Counsel of the Office of Management and Budget, Mark Paoletta. And Tricia, please, thanks for coming, please. And two other former colleagues of mine in Congress, former Congressman Tom McMillan and Congressman Charlie Dent. Please rise, please. On their way is our ambassador to Canada, U.S. Ambassador Kelly Knight Craft, and her husband Joe. And I have a feeling because they were flying in, the weather may have altered their plans. They are here now? Please stand. Where are they? All right. Thank you for coming. You've had a busy week, Ambassador. Got a new treaty. And I think a good one. We want to thank our leader, our world-renowned National Archivist, David Ferriero, for welcoming us to his home. Thank you, David. We also want to welcome and thank tonight's sponsors, AT&T, Edgeworth Economics, and David M. Rubenstein, who have always showed us strong support, and we deeply appreciate it. Thank you. So tonight we present our highest honor to Laura Bush in recognition of her lifelong commitment to civic education and literacy. This is a subject very near and dear to the hearts of our board members and our National Archives and our archivists. In fact, along with the archives, we aboard the foundation are working on a plan to dramatically expand civic education and engagement, so stay tuned for more of that. But our awardee tonight, Laura Bush, has shared her love of literature with children and adults from all walks of life, from her work as a teacher and a librarian to her work as First Lady, and that at the George W. Bush Center. Laura Bush has demonstrated the power of a good story to captivate and inspire. Here at the National Archives, we too understand the power of a good story, which is why we work so hard each day to tell the story of our nation. And so we look forward to this program tonight. So now I would like to welcome, it's my pleasure, the leader of our archives, the man who has opened his doors this evening to all of us. Please join me in welcoming our world-renowned and friend, the Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero.
Thank you, Jim, and good evening all, and welcome to my house as we honor former First Lady Laura Bush. And those of you who have been at the last couple of award ceremonies have come to appreciate my demonstration of socks. So tonight we have a special Laura Bush version of the socks. Which are special librarian socks, available in our shop, by the way, and online. You can order them online. But I'm delighted to recognize a fellow librarian. And you may be surprised to learn how much we have in common. We studied for our master's in library science at the same time, relocated to Washington for executive branch positions on Pennsylvania Avenue, and both proudly champion our nation's history. But in all seriousness, First Lady Laura Bush's unwavering support of civic literacy, her passion for education, and her unyielding commitment to the empowerment of women make her both an obvious choice for this award and for the launch of our Women's Vote Centennial celebration. Laura Bush has been an educator, a librarian, the First Lady of Texas, the First Lady of the United States, and a global advocate through the George W. Bush Presidential Center. The common thread linking her life's work together is this intrinsic love of learning that she continues to share with the world. Laura Bush's educational work through the Bush Center in programs such as Middle School Matters, the School Leadership Initiative, Advancing Accountability in Education, and of course my favorite, your Foundation for America's Libraries, all demonstrate a commitment and passion for ensuring a literate society. This mission was what President Franklin Roosevelt had in mind when he created the National Archives, a mission which continues to be vital to our democracy. Laura Bush said, "We must prepare our children and grandchildren with the tools they need to be informed, engaged citizens who care about individual liberty and democracy. We must teach them history. We must insist they understand the government they are blessed to live under. We must teach our children to listen, to show empathy, to show civility in the face of disagreement, and to overcome malice and hate. And we must model the behavior ourselves." At the National Archives, we work to provide students of all ages with the tools they need to understand history and become active participants in our government. We recently launched the Civic Education webpage to make our education initiatives accessible to parents, teachers, and students. Docs Teach, our online tool for teaching with documents, features more than 10,000 primary source documents and interactive activities for teachers and students. We make history fun with sleepovers in the rotunda upstairs. Coming up this weekend, as a matter of fact, Saturday night, our latest, with a theme of Native Americans. And we host a variety of educational programs across the country throughout the year. We would not be here tonight if it wasn't for our partner, the National Archives Foundation, helping the National Archives reach an ever larger and more diverse audience. Together, we make civic literacy a reality. With the support of the foundation and generous benefactors like you, we celebrated our 4th annual July reading of the 4th of July reading of the Declaration of Independence on the steps of this building. We hosted 2 widely popular National Archives sleepovers, and we'll launch our next exhibit, Rightfully Hers, this March on the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote in the Lawrence F. O'Brien Gallery. Tonight, we celebrate this shared vision between Laura Bush and the National Archives family. Through the work of the former First Lady, the National Archives, and the National Archives Foundation, we're striving for a nation in which all children have the same love of learning that drove Laura Bush to pursue her dreams and make the world a better place. Thank you for joining us this evening as we celebrate our public-private partnership with the Foundation and pay tribute to Laura Bush.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present our 2018 Records of Achievement honoree, Laura Bush. Please. And we are joined by the Vice Chair of our National Archives Foundation, the best Vice Chair anyone could ever have, Cokie Roberts. All right. They're going to have a conversation, but I get to say a couple more things. All right. You know, we give this award each year. It's special. We try to make the award something of special significance to the honoree. And we understand that Laura Ingalls Wilder is one of our honoree's favorite authors. In 2017, Laura Bush wrote, in the hot, and I quote, "In the hot, arid lands of West Texas, I tried to imagine being surrounded by tall pine trees and heavy snow. And of course, I identified with the main character, a brown-haired girl named Laura." The 2018 Records of Achievement Award features a handwritten insert by Laura Ingalls Wilder to a typescript draft of her 5th Little House novel, By the Shores of Silver Lake. This insert was added to an early draft attempting to explain how Mary, Laura's older sister, had become blind in the intervening time period since On the Banks of Plum Creek. These are books, by the way, I have not read, but obviously I don't know what to, but a lot of people have. This insert is part of the collection of the Rose Wilder Lane papers at the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum. And so, what you've been waiting for now, our journalist, best-selling author, historian in her own right, and our vice chair, Cokie Roberts, will now have a conversation with Laura Bush about her contributions to our society. We thank you again for being with us.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much. I did love the Laura Bush, the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. And so this is a really wonderful gift. Thank you very, very much. I'm thrilled with it. Thanks a lot.
2 more introductions before we start. Many of your former staff members are here. That's right. So would you all please stand? We won't see you, but
we have Anita, who was in the video.
Look at all of them.
Oh, here they are.
There they all are.
Thank you. Great.
And of course, you know how important they are to the work you've done. And the man you convinced to start the National Book Festival, Jim Billington, the
Yes, he's
longtime
right over
Librarian
there.
of Congress.
He
and
was
his-
my partner in the National Book Festival.
and his
Thank you
wife,
so much,
Marjorie.
Dr. Billington.
And Marjorie Billington.
He knew I'd started the Texas Book Festival, and he called me right after we moved to the White House and said, "Let's have a National Book Festival."
Well, and what
So
a
thank you,
success
Dr.
it's been,
Billington,
so.
very much. Appreciate it.
So, we all want to know,
How was the wedding?
how was the wedding? And also, I have to tell you, as a reporter, keeping it secret, not good. But how did you manage that?
Well, I think Barbara just kept it a secret. Plus, so few people were invited. It was just our family and Craig's family. And it didn't include Jeb or Neil or any of those other
Oh, dear.
uncles. So it was just really just our family. She wanted to get married there because that's where her grandfather is. And she wanted to be with him. And so we had a wedding outside looking at the ocean. And then we went in and had dinner at the dining room table. There were 20 of us at the dining room table. So it was just perfect. So it was Barbara and Craig, her new husband, who we like a lot, and his family and our family. And the little flower girls were Mila, Jenna's little girl, and Emma, Craig's niece, and the ring bearer was Poppy, who was very proud of being a ring bearer. During of course, the box was empty because they knew that she couldn't really have the ring. So Craig had it in his pocket.
Poppy is the baby.
Poppy's
Is
the baby, the 3-year-old. But so during the entire ceremony, she walked around with the ring box to show it to everyone. Anyway, it was
That
very,
was
very
wise because
sweet. and it-
Actually, my nephew did lose my ring.
The ring,
my
exactly.
My wedding. And it was actually found by President Johnson's doctor with the little ear light. So
So it was a lot of fun. We had a wonderful time. It was just this weekend. George and I just flew from Maine yesterday morning to Washington.
well, congratulations to everyone, and we were all very pleased to see it, but as I say, secret. I was just with you and your daughters and their cousins in Dallas honoring Barbara Bush's literacy heritage, and we had a panel of the grandchildren, which was hysterical. But one of the things they revealed when you talk about going in for lunch is that you used to have in Kennebunkport taco Sundays with Barbara Bush, and then she died, and the
As
kids.
soon as she died, we started having hamburger and hot dog Sundays. President Bush said he never had liked those tacos.
All those years he had put up with them. So the last time I think you were on this stage, at least the last time I was with you on this stage, you were here with Michelle Obama, which you've done several times. And I want to come back to that in a little bit. But first I want to talk about First Ladies in general, because, you know, we kind of danced around it a little bit in the video, but it is such an interesting role and an important role, and one that the American people are always kind of nervous about, you know. You've got a lot of power, you can't be fired, they they don't know what you're up to, you know, unless, except what you choose to tell them, right? And therefore, we create our own kind of stories about a first lady, and you said, and I'm quoting you here, our first ladies are much more complicated than they ever get treated in the media. And I think what happens is a story goes up about them, a myth that people stick to for all coverage of them forever after. And you felt that
And of
happened
course,
with
I was the quiet reader and librarian.
Right, right.
And I was that. I mean, that, you know, there's no doubt about it. But all of our first ladies have been a lot more complicated and have been very constructive for our country from
Exactly.
the very beginning.
From the very beginning. One of the great myths that, you know, they were sitting around pouring tea until Eleanor Roosevelt or something, you know, makes me crazy. But, so you've just had at the Bush Center, which is the library part of it is part of the National Archives, a First Lady's special exhibit. Please tell me it wasn't about dresses.
There were a few gowns in it, but no, it was not about dresses, and we didn't want it to be about dresses. People love to come see the dresses, and we had a dress show earlier when the library first opened with some of Nancy Reagan's clothes, but we wanted this to be substantive because we knew that besides wearing lovely gowns, that our first ladies had made so many contributions to our country. So one gown that was there that I think is interesting was a mock-up of a gown that Dolly Madison made out of the red velvet drapes that she saved from the White House
Wow.
when the British
Where
burned
is
the
it?
White House.
Where's it been saved?
Well, no, this was a
Oh,
copy.
copy.
It was a copy of it, so I think the dress was not saved.
Not saved.
But we talked about the contributions that each First Lady had made. It was a show that we did ourselves that the Bush Library curators came up with. And this does give me the chance to thank the National Archives because, of course, the National Archives administer the President's papers. The President's papers are seen as belonging to the people of the United States, and the archives administer those papers. So the National Archives is a very important part of the Bush Library, the museum part, and then, of course, the storage of all the papers that are there at the Bush Library. And so I want to thank the National Archives and the Archivist and everyone here for your work. And, of course, those employees at the Bush Library are employees, they're archivists that are employees of the government.
So you talk about the role that First Ladies played, and again, you said, and you had a very interesting kind of session with those of us who are historians, et cetera, as you were leaving the White House. So I've written down every word. And you said, every time I spoke out about something, even heart disease, I would be surprised again at how many people heard me. And I often use Lady Bird Johnson's quote about the First Lady has a podium. And while she was here, she said, I've decided to use it. And you quoted her often about that, and you did take that to heart, deciding to use it.
That's right, and of course, we knew Lady Bird. She was a Texas First Lady, and when she opened the Wildflower Center close to outside of Austin, we hosted, George was governor, and we hosted on the lawn of the governor's mansion the picnic for the opening of the Wildflower Center, and then went out that night to the opening gala of the National Wildflower Center. And I always really admired Lady Bird Johnson because she thought the way we were, all of us, and our landscape everywhere around our country was enough. And it was beautiful as it was naturally.
Except
and I
the
like
billboards.
that.
She didn't like the billboards.
No billboards, and that was very
Right.
difficult to get
Right.
rid of. In fact,
Very.
I think only 2 states actually managed it, to not have billboards anymore. I was with the governor of Vermont, lone Republican in Vermont, when George ran for president the first time, and he said that they had stayed in suits until just recently to be able to outlaw billboards.
But you then started using that podium at first for things that you had done before, the book festival, literacy. You did a big conference on cognitive development in early childhood. And on your way to the Capitol to testify before the Senate Education Committee, why people thought you were not out there, I don't know. You heard that the first plane had crashed into the World Trade Center.
That's right. So everything that I'd done up to that, the National Book Festival had been that weekend before September 11th. We'd hosted our first state dinner for Mexico, which is where we were obviously neighbors of Mexico and Texas. We expected our, all of our interest in other countries to be centered around our hemisphere and Mexico. All those things had happened, and then I was on Capitol Hill in Senator Ted Kennedy's office about to brief his Senate Committee on Early Childhood Education when we got the word that the planes had flown into the World Trade Center. And we thought, of course, when we heard the first one that it was some odd accident, and then when we heard the second one, we knew it was not an accident. So then, of course, everything changed for me. And the things I'd expected to work on, I still did work on. But then I added other things, like supporting Afghan women and our military, things that I'd never expected really to work on. I'd made a 6th grade report on Afghanistan. I never expected to actually go to Afghanistan.
Now, I'm
but I did.
surprised because your name was Welch. I had to do Afghanistan, but that's because my name was Boggs. It was the top of the
I
alphabet.
picked it. I picked the country myself. We got to pick the countries.
But you then really took it on. I mean, well, first of all, I should say, by the way, that Mrs. Bush and Senator Kennedy were together pretty much all day as you were trying to figure out what was going on. And Senator Kennedy later said, you get to know somebody in a situation like that. And he said she was steady, assured, and elegant.
That was sweet.
Well,
Well,
it's also
he kept
true.
up a steady stream of small talk. And he showed me everything on his office walls. He read me a letter that his brother Jack had written to their mother that said, Teddy is getting fat. And he laughed at it. And I never knew if that was the way he had to deal with the trauma, because he'd had so many in his life, or if he thought I'd fall apart. And so he just felt like he had to keep up this, small talk. And then Senator Judd Gregg, who was the minority chairman of the Education Committee, joined us from New Hampshire, and one of our best friends, still one of our best friends. We see him a lot. We're going to see him and have dinner with him next weekend when they'll be in Dallas. His son has moved to Fort Worth. And Judd and I would sort of look at each other while Senator Kennedy talked and told stories and told us things about his office. And so I don't know if he did it because that was just the way he reacted, or if he thought he needed to for me.
Right.
But anyway, then we went out to talk to the press and tell them that obviously the briefing had been canceled, postponed. We were already, you're not going to stop us. We're going to do it later. And he changed his whole personality, became very serious and perfect for the press, really, under the circumstances. And then I did brief the Senate committee a couple of months later.
But you said, I grew in both my realization that I had a podium, but also in my expertise about some international issues that I didn't come to the White House with. And that really did change a lot of your focus. And you went to Afghanistan, I think, 3 times when you were in the White House, and you took on more and more. I think you went to 76 countries.
That's right. I visited 76 countries.
While you were First Lady, going to Africa, Asia, the Middle East. PEPFAR was very much part of your portfolio, saving millions and millions of lives in Africa. Malaria, talking about breast cancer in the Middle East where it wasn't talked about, so it couldn't be treated. Heart disease, all of it.
Gosh, I did a lot.
You did a lot, and actually that was a great dress exhibit, the First Lady's red dress exhibit on heart disease. But you did also, and this was one that always just gobsmacked me, I have to say, take on the military government of Burma. Big time.
I did. I was a secret friend of Aung San Suu Kyi, where I could send her things. And I would get messages of things she wanted, like seaweed. I think she liked to eat seaweed or drink seaweed or something. And I would always send her a book that I liked, that I thought maybe she would like. So during all those years, I had this friendship with Aung San Suu Kyi and would send her various items and paid a lot of attention to her. And then finally, when we left, she was under house arrest for all those years. By the time we left, she had, been able to be the leader of Burma. But now, as we're watching, we don't know what to think with the Rohingyas. I don't know if the military, who always really were the ones that were in power during the whole time, even though she'd been elected president, I don't know if it's a military thing and she's compromised by the military.
Right.
I'm not sure because now I'm not in contact with her anymore.
Yeah. But you went to the press room, the briefing room. You were on your way to Jenna's wedding, as I recall. Had a few things to do on the home front, but went into the press room. Now, no First Lady's ever done that before or since. You grabbed the microphone and basically used it to denounce the military rule in Burma because they were not responding to a cyclone where they had not even accepted American aid. And yet you were described as prim. So how do you account for that?
No, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it is how we treat First Ladies. you know, isn't the little First Lady nice?
Right. Bless her heart.
Does she make cookies? We really think about Lady Bird Johnson, who was one of the founders of an environmental movement. But people said, isn't that nice that she likes flowers?
She hated the word beautification, in fact. But you kept at it after you left office, of keeping these causes going, particularly Afghan women, but also in Africa. And I want to come back to you and Michelle Obama together, because you had convened First Ladies of Africa
that's right.
Summit, which in itself was just wildly interesting. But then you discovered that the Obamas just happened to be on the continent at the same time as you, and you invited Mrs. Obama to come.
Well, that's one of the things we've done through the Bush Library, and that is this First Ladies Initiative. Working with First Ladies who, in many cases, in many parts of the world, don't have the sort of platform that American First Ladies have. And we've worked with First Ladies to give them the chance to build that kind of platform, because they can work on issues that their husbands aren't working on. And the very first thing we did was an African First Ladies Conference when we were in Africa. And we work with the First Ladies themselves, but also our staff work with their staffs to try to figure out ways they can set up their offices so that the First Ladies can be more effective. Because when you have both leaders, the husband and the wife, working, you can do twice as much. So the first African First Ladies Conference, we hosted in Africa, and Michelle Obama was there, so she could come to it.
Well, it was better than that. Because I had the great honor of being the person to interview the two of them together. I got a call from the Bush Center saying, "Can you be in Tanzania next week?" And I said no. And then my husband said, "Why not?" So off I went, and there were the two of them. And it was, first of all, it was such an important symbol for the First Ladies of Africa to see this
Well, that is a symbol, because in many cases they would never, and they said this, never speak to the leader that was before them because they were corrupt, or, you know, there was some other reason. They wouldn't have that continuity that we have with our former presidents and former First Ladies. And it is kind of like a club, you know, just like the National Governors Association gives you the chance to be with other governors and their spouses, and you know, gives you a chance to know what's going on. It's really very helpful, I think, for First Ladies to be together. And I think it's a great example, both for Americans to see and for other people in other countries to see.
But I remember when I asked at that point, because you had basically said to Mrs. Obama, come and do whatever you want to do, right? You can make a speech, you can, and she could have hijacked it, frankly, right?
She wouldn't have.
No, I know, and you knew that, and she wanted to be in a conversation with you. And I said, as I was having the conversation, Mrs. Obama, you wanted to be in this conversation with Mrs. Bush. Why? And she reached out her hand to you and said, "I love this woman." And it was such a moment of just, you know, making you feel good about the country. And then you did it again here the following year, and brought the African First Ladies here.
During the UNGA in New York, when their spouses were in New York for the General Assembly, we hosted it then.
And then you and Mrs. Obama did an event here, I think just this year. Or was it last year? 2 years. Oh, my goodness, time flies. This is what happens when you get old. You think it was 5 minutes.
She was First
ago.
Lady.
But it was on military spouses, right? And so do you continue that work together?
No, not really, not since they left. I mean, it doesn't mean we wouldn't at some time continue to do something together, but not really. We've mainly seen them, as you know, at funerals.
Where there was, you know, press about the fact that President Bush gave
Gave her an Altoid.
that was considered, I don't know what.
I don't know why that was so fascinating, but
But But you do say that there is this bond among first ladies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone knows, the first ladies know what it's like, and they're friendly with each other. Maybe they wouldn't be friendly if they'd run against each other, but
Although the presidents end up being friends, too.
yeah, the presidents do too.
I mean, I remember actually interviewing President Bush 41 soon after he left office, and he said, I can't imagine that I'll ever be friends with Clinton the way that Ford and Carter are. And then he became a fifth son.
Yeah, exactly. Well, of course, that also speaks to how President Bush is, which is so great, and he's so courtly, and he's so, that's just how he is, that he would be friends with anyone. He would never have a feud with somebody that beat him in some race.
Mrs. Bush might have.
I might have, yeah. Or Barr would have, for sure.
Right.
Not really, she wouldn't either.
But
I wanted to talk a little bit more about Barr, my
okay, let's
mother-in-law.
do that.
I wanted to tell you all some things about her. One thing at her funeral, which was perfect. I don't know if you all watched it. I think it was televised, but she had planned it all, and it was really great. And she got to do what no one else really gets to do. She had put out the word that she was not going to have any more treatment. And so everyone started writing her obituaries before she died. And so she got to read them. And they were all, of course, very laudatory. And then she'd ask John Meacham if he would talk at her funeral, and he called her and he said, Barr, I've got my talk ready. Do you want to hear it? So I hope she got to hear it all. She probably was in so much pain then that she didn't really care anymore and was ready to go on. But anyway, it was when we had the funeral in Houston at their church, St. Martin's. Then we drove to College Station, where their gravesite is, at the Bush Presidential Library at Texas A&M University. So we drove there, and we had a police escort, and they just would stop the cars at the access roads before they got on. They didn't really hold up a lot of traffic, but we'd look down at the access roads, and those Texans would be out of their cars, and those Texas men would have their cowboy hats over their hearts. It was really, really sweet. And then when we got to Texas A&M, we walked with the casket by 700 saluting Texas A&M cadets.
Fabulous.
It was really lovely. And it was perfect
It
for
was
Barr.
perfect. It was perfect in every way. I mean, I was covering it on television and, weeping my way through, but happy tears because it was.
She was ready to go. And
Well, tell
so
the
that-
story that
that encouraged us.
she told your husband about.
Well, so George called her. We had seen her. She had fallen. And we'd been in Houston. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia had come to the U.S., and so he wanted to meet with George and his dad. So we went to Houston and had lunch with him. He has ended up being slightly, we're kind of worried about him now. But anyway, so while Barr was in the hospital because she'd fallen, so George and I went by to see her. So when we got the word that she was not going to have any more treatment, we didn't try to go down to Houston to see her. I think that all the other kids did, but we had just seen her. And so George called her and said, Mother, you were a wonderful mother, and I'm so glad you were my mother, and thank you for everything. And she said, well, and he said, I love you. And she said, well, I love you too, George. And she said, you're my favorite son. On the phone. So she stayed funny and quick till the end.
And told a nurse or a doctor or whatever that he turned out this way because.
Yeah, exactly. So then when we had gone to see her after we saw the Crown Prince, we didn't really realize she was about to die. Even when she said she wasn't going to have any more treatment, we just still were planning on going to Maine and where she would be, because she wouldn't, which
Right.
bedroom she'd be in. And we didn't know it was really that soon. But when she was in the hospital, when George went to see her, she said, you know what, to the doctor, you know why George turned out the way he did? And the doctor said, no, why? And she said, because I drank and smoked when I was pregnant with him.
She
She
never
was
missed
always
it.
bad.
She never missed it, right? So I guess we should end on a somewhat serious note about civic education, because it's something you care deeply about, and you know that our children don't learn it, and the numbers are just horrible. of what people don't know. And, you know, it is wonderful when we have these naturalization ceremonies here in front of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. Those people have actually all had to learn.
Know it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we need to teach it more. I think we went through sort of a stage where we were embarrassed about ourselves, like we were trying to act like we're better or something. But the fact is, we're so lucky to have inherited the institutions that we inherited and all the ones that support our democracy. And it's really important for people to know about them and to be proud of it. Why not
Right.
be proud of it? One of the things we're working on with women from Tunisia and Egypt, and that we started with at the Bush Institute with those women from those two countries because they were the two Arab Spring countries. But they don't have the institutions to support a democracy. And it's been very hard, and both countries have sort of slid back. And we inherited those institutions. We didn't have to do anything for them. We were just lucky to get them. And it's really important, I think, for people to know that and to know about them. The reason we can have a democracy is because we have those institutions. The free press, the independent judiciary, I mean, all the things that we have. And so I think it's important that we teach that. And we need to go back and not be embarrassed about teaching it.
And we have to get it on the test.
That's right. We need to get it on the test. And then if it's on the test, they'll teach it.
Right. No, it's true. So-
Exactly.
Well, thank you for all of your teaching
Thank you
over
very
the
much.
many
Thank you,
years
Cokie.
and the wonderful work that you continue to do.
Thank you very
And
much.
congratulations
And thanks
on this.
to everybody. Thank you for your support for the National Archives. I encourage you to give more to the foundation. Thank you all very, very much.
Yes. Laura and Cokie, thank you for allowing us to enjoy your conversation. And Laura Bush, thank you for your service to our country and for helping build a better world. Thank you. Now, we're going to do some photos. Invite all of you as we finish the program to join us upstairs in the Rotunda Galleries for our gala dinner, our annual gala dinner. And thank you again, all of you, for coming.